Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at the Expert Connect Wellness Chats. We meet on this platform to talk about things that are important to our community, especially during this pandemic. And today we're joined by one of our experts, Tahira Jamani. Tahira is the founder of the Chain Reaction. Tahira, good morning. How are you
Good
doing?
morning. Doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Good.
Excited to have you here with us today on this beautiful day. And we have lots of questions locked and loaded for you. But why don't you start by telling us a couple of things about you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a mindfulness facilitator and the founder of the Chain Reaction. And I'm also a certified teacher of the Search Inside Yourself program, which is the mindfulness and emotional intelligence program that was developed at Google. And I've also completed two 10-day silent meditation courses.
I'm always fascinated when you talk about the silent meditation because I'm always like, oh my God, one day I'd like to do that. But I don't know. I probably will be like talking the first half
We'll
hour.
chat about it. We'll chat about it.
But Sarah, we did an Instagram call and we're getting a lot of questions around um what is awareness, how do I know what I'm feeling, my emotions, and what is gratitude. Sometimes people think these are like buzzwords for this COVID-19 era, I believe. So you are the expert. Would love to ask you, what are your thoughts on these three things?
Yeah, absolutely. So awareness first and foremost is really about becoming aware of our kind of internal states and also our outer environment. So it kind of goes twofold, if you will. And internally, we look at self-awareness. So sort of what's coming up for us, like
Mhm.
we kind of turn to emotions is a really big one, emotional awareness, because that's really what can drive and compel us to act in certain ways. And oftentimes we are not aware of our emotions, or we haven't really been trained to become aware of them. Maybe some of us have been trained to push them underneath the rug and just kind of suppress it and let it go. And as I say, there's only so much you can push under the rug until you trip. So I think emotional awareness is a really big key piece for us um, to start to train how to become aware of our emotions and sort of what's coming up for us. And there's lots of different types of ways that we can do this. And a really crucial way is specifically through body scan meditation, which is what I did at that meditation course, because our emotions show up in our body as sensations, right?
Mhm.
Um, and emotions have a huge impact on our decision making ability as well, because then it's if we're experiencing frustration, how do we express that frustration? How do we decide how to express that? And oftentimes we're just sort of feel compelled by an emotion, and then we just have an outburst, or something happens where we may have been able to actually communicate it in a more effective manner, for example. um, and actually there's a really cool study that was done called the Iowa gambling task. And what they did was researchers took participants and put them in a room, and there were four decks of cards. There were two decks that were blue and two decks that were red. And they were kind of testing in this study the intersection between physiology and emotion and decision making. And the participants had to flip over one card at a time in a way that's going to maximize their earnings. So each card would either cost them or make them money. But what the participants didn't know is that the red cards were actually minefields. So they were going to cost them money. So the question was really, at what point did they become aware that the red cards were to be avoided, right? And what they found out was that after actually 50 cards, turning over 50 cards, we had a hunch. Participants had a hunch. They didn't realize what was happening, but they had a hunch that something was actually going on. And the are we good? Okay. Um, and then what actually happened was at 80 cards, we'd actually figured it out. Participants had figured out what was happening. So they figured out that the red cards were to be avoided, and the blue cards were the money makers. And what they did as well in this test was researchers hooked up participants to a polygraph. And we know polygraph is usually, a lie detector, right? But the polygraph will actually detect the sweat glands in our body. And usually sweat glands respond to temperature, except for the ones in our hands that actually respond to stress.
Interesting.
And what was kind of cool was that they found out that after only 10 cards did participants' hands start to get clammy and have this stress response, because they kind of like knew, they were like, their body was responding to the stress of losing the money, right, with the red cards.
Right.
But then at 50 cards we actually have a hunch, and at 80 cards participants actually figured out. So think about that gap, right? Our body is telling us at 10 cards in, something's up with these red cards.
Right.
And so there was a gap of about 40 cards. I thought that was just really interesting because it shows the power of our emotions and like our sweat glands and our response and how our body actually responds, because we downplay that, right, so often. So a lot of mindfulness practice can help us to become more aware of when these sensations are arising. We're like, oh, my hands are getting sweaty, maybe I'm stressed. What is that telling me, right?
Right.
So a lot of these practices that I share sort of help us to become more aware of these sort of, I guess, sensations that help us to become more aware of our emotions. And from there, we can choose how we want to respond, either to a person or an event or whatever it might be, an email.
Right.
So that's kind of like the power behind awareness and emotional awareness specifically. And I mean, awareness in our environment, we're surrounded by things and distractions and stuff happening all the time, even when we're on the road and a car cuts us off. Like that's we have to become aware of that, right?
Right.
So the more sharper and focused our mind is, the more engaged we actually can be with life from a more real perspective, more real element, versus just being on autopilot,
Agreed. And think about the power of all of these things and how does it impact our mental health then? Because I think as we are surrounded, the more negative we become, I think even with the participants, the more they found out that, oh, this was happening and the red cards weren't good or whatever it was, I think it truly does impact our mental health in ways that is then our body then starts showing how our mental health is. And I'd like to talk to you about the power of optimism and mental health. How do you think, what's the correlation between the two?
Yeah, absolutely. So I feel like optimism is, knowing and identifying that not everything is going to be great, but we can be optimistic that things will get better and things will be, like bad days come, bad moments come, challenging times come, and also not so challenging times come. And that's, I think, a big difference between optimism and positivity, because positivity just sort of, I think, like stuffs everything down and is like, everything's great, everything's rainbows and unicorns, nothing's wrong, but optimism is more realistic in the element of, there will be tough times that come in and some not so tough times. And how that really impacts our mental health is, I mean, like we tell ourselves stories all the time. So we believe what we want to believe. And sometimes we don't believe that that's actually the case, but it is. And a really, kind of testament to this is when I hit burnout. I was 24. I was living in Toronto. I thought everything was great. I had a good job, good relationship, like living by myself. I was living in Toronto. Everything was fine, as it should be, as I was told. That's how life should be, But my body was telling me otherwise. I was undergoing a lot of stress in areas that I was not aware about. They were there and I was kind of aware, but I was like, no, it's fine. I just suppressed it. I was in denial. And And this actually showed up in my body as intense physical pain. So I was going home every day from work with like crippling stomach pains. And and I just thought, oh, it's an allergy. Oh, it's this. Oh, I kind of put it off to something else. And then when I finally became aware that it was stress and my body was just giving out, like I needed to allow it some time and space to recover and heal, was super transformational for me because our health is the most important thing. And it's, it's kind of like a bank, like we take from this bank all the time. We have sleepless nights and we don't eat well or we don't exercise and we do all these things to our bodies and our minds. And then we are surprised when these things happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a lot of connection there between, knowing that stress and these other mental challenges that we face do show up physically. And there is a correlation, and there is, we need to learn to become aware of them and listen to our body, and be optimistic in the sense that, we can get through it, we can work through it. But it's just about finding different tools than what might already be maybe the normal, right? Like doctors are great, but what really helped me was seeing a naturopath, which is a little bit kind of an offshoot.
Right. Right.
So I think that's a really important piece.
Yeah, no, for sure. That is great. And I think in my own journey, I found out that meditating truly helps me clear my mind, get in sync with my body, feel grounded. But I also think that, do I know what is meditation? Some days I'm like, am I meditating? I sat here for 5 minutes and I thought about so many different things, but some days it's a good run. I don't think about anything. So, as an expert, I'd like to ask you, what is meditation and why do you think meditation is so important?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good question. So meditation, as I talk about it and define it, is a mental strength training process. It's just an exercise that we can do to help us strengthen certain areas um, of our mental capacity. And there's lots of different types of meditations that we can go into. And I mean, even as you're mentioning, that you sit for a few minutes sometimes and then you were just thinking about things for 5 minutes, that's also okay because we're just becoming aware of it, right? Like meditation is also cultivating different elements or different factors, depending on what you're trying to work on. So, for example, if you're working on awareness, I mean, you can just become aware that I've had all these thoughts. We fall into trouble is when we don't realize I'm having all these thoughts and I'm really disengaged with life or my task or whatever it is we're doing. Um, so it's really about just training our minds because we've actually been trained now to be distracted because we have so many distractions
Mm-hmm.
all the time. So where, our that part of our brain becomes stronger, the more we use it.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're using this distracted part of our minds all the time, like how, um, like being more distracted, the stronger that part of our brain gets. So then we're just easily distracted. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
no, for sure. And would you prefer, like, I know you said that there are different types of meditations. Do
Hmm.
you personally prefer one over the other?
I mean, there's two main styles that I do most frequently. So
Mhm.
I guess you could say that I prefer those personally. I think for everybody it's a little bit different. It sort of depends what works for you and as I said, also what you're trying to perhaps work on.
Mm.
For me, I do a lot of focused attention meditation. So my mind is often distracted all over the place. So I like to focus in on a specific either object, could be like a visualization or a mantra. I usually just use my breath because I have it with me all the time.
Mhm.
So when our mind wanders, I just bring it back to the breath and kind of always, you know, just bring it back. And that helps to build concentration because
Mhm.
sometimes we're not aware that a mind has wandered. But when we become aware of it, then I'm like, oh, my mind's wandered. I'm going to bring it back. So the more we kind of work that muscle, the easier it is for us to concentrate. So that's one that I do very frequently, and the other one I do is Vipassana style meditation, which is the course that I went to,
Yes.
and that's ultimately a body scan meditation. So becoming aware of the sensations that are on our body at different times. It's really based in the law of nature that everything is changing. So at some point, if I'm, doing the body scan, I'll notice that my scalp feels itchy. And by the time I come back to it the next time and I haven't itched it, I haven't touched anything, the itch is gone. So
Mm.
it's, we don't need to react to things all the time. We just need to allow it to be and it'll sort itself out. So it helps me to become more aware of my emotions and the sensations that are coming up, and also to kind of tap into that scientific part, if you will, around the law of nature and how everything is just changing all the time.
Interesting. Interesting. I resonate more with the first one. I don't think I can sort of stop the urge to scratch if I'm meditating, but we'll get there one day.
Yeah.
When I meditate, it's more for self-care. I think it's very important that I make meditation part of my self-care regime. But talk to us a little bit about self-care and self-compassion and how these things impact our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I think self-care is one of those pieces that we know we need to do, but
Mhm.
it's hard to do because we often want to care for others and do things for others,
Mhm.
um, and it's hard to turn inwards and to look after ourselves. And also, I will say that self-care looks different for everybody. Um, I used to think it was, going and getting my nails done, get my hair done, and of course, those things, help us to feel good. But when I started to meditate, and I remember on my the first 10-day course I was doing, I actually experienced true self-care and self-love for like what works for me. And it
Mhm.
was really just spending time with myself in this particular way. And, the whole like kind of plethora of positives came from that in terms of building self-confidence and understanding myself and gaining inner clarity and calming my mind and all these other elements that was really a deeper level of self-care, if you will.
Mhm.
um, so I think that's really important to note that it can look very different for different people, because also spin class is a really big thing of self-care for me too, and it's totally
Right.
different to meditating. So I think it's really, really important. And we have to have self compassion around self care, because we have to allow ourselves to engage in self care, whatever that might look like. Um, and self compassion is really important to have in challenging times, which we know 2020 has been full of challenging moments, uh, setbacks, and maybe mistakes that we've made or that have come up, and failures, and all these sort of challenging times. That's when self compassion is really, really crucial. Um, and there's a great researcher, Dr. Kristen Neff, who sort of outlines self compassion as having three intersecting elements, as she gives us kind of frameworks. The first is mindfulness versus over identifying. So, if we're feeling a certain way, just noticing that, okay, I'm feeling frustrated perhaps, but
Mm.
not becoming over identified with it, because we kind of spiral out from there.
Right.
The second element is self kindness versus self judgment. So, how we
Mm.
speak to ourselves, right? Instead
Mhm.
of being critical. And the
Mhm.
third piece is common humanity versus isolation. So, knowing that, you're not the first person that this has happened to, right?
Right.
Like, we are part of a larger group, and it's not just you. So kind of feeling a bit of peace of mind and solace in that, in like a communal setting, in that way, that you're
Mm.
part of this common humanity and you're not the first person that's had this mistake or this setback or this challenge. And it's not to undermine what we might be going through, but just to know that there is, other humans out there. And as humans, we are destined to fail or to fall on our faces sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
it's part of life. So that's sort of a framework that I implement and I share with clients around how to actually engage in self compassion and
Mm.
put some kind of tools around it.
Mm. That was
Mhm.
beautiful to her. Thank you for sharing that. I think that is so important. Being able to bridge that gap between self-compassion and self-care is so important. What I also think is very important, especially during this time as we're still in this pandemic, is what is the importance of being connected to others and also being compassionate to others. I feel that when we social media, and I think I was listening to this book from Kevin Hart, and he talks about how we are living in this world that's so full of hate and things that are bad are happening, and it's all over social media. So talk to us about the importance of being compassionate to others.
Mhm. Yeah, being compassionate is extremely important. It can be very difficult to do from a true place. Compassion can be sort of defined as, the attentive experience of others, like being attentive to their experience, and then wanting what's best for them, and also knowing what will truly serve. So
Mm,
it kind of brings us into this space that it's bigger than just us.
mm,
It's not just about us, it's about the other person. And a way that kind of that we can frame it is what will truly serve, right? What's going to serve this other person? Because we sometimes have to kind of pick the process that we're going with. Like, am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for the other person? Am I leaving a comment on someone's Instagram page um, for myself, or for them, right? And that's sometimes where we see a lot of like a lot of hate that comes up, social media or otherwise as well.
mhm,
But when we're able to come from that place of, wanting others to do well and be well, we open up this space of compassion, and it's so powerful because it makes us courageous. It makes us realize that it's not just about me, it can be about you, and that's okay. And coming to that from a very true place, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. As I mentioned with self compassion, we're it's common humanity, right? We all want to be happy, we all want to be safe, experience joy, all of these things. If we look at like fundamental um, human elements that we all want to experience, and when we bring it back down to these sort of basics, it's hard to deny that this person wants to be happy. So maybe it's an opportunity for us to reframe what this person might be doing or bringing to us or saying to us, right? Like
mhm,
they might be sharing this with us because they think that this is going to help them be safe or be happy. And then it's just about maybe opening up the conversation, like, hey, that really didn't, sit well with me, and let's talk about it. Let's
mm.
open up the conversation and talk about it. I think that's where the connection piece really comes in. And it's so crucial, as you said, even at a time like right now, where there is so much challenge and struggle. How can we, help others? And we have to help ourselves too. We have to look after ourselves before we can sort of look after others. So it's just sort of an interesting space to note that, yeah, there's a lot of power and courage that comes from being compassionate, but it's not always easy. And I totally appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah, I know. Some days it can be a bit too much, but I know as an expert, you definitely have tools that you provide your clients with when they come to seek your services.
Mhm.
So, what are some mindset tools that you can share with our viewers today that they can implement on their own wellness journey?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a short micro practice that I love to share and really resonates well with most of my clients, and it's a 3 breath practice. So it helps with kind of refocusing, regrounding, reprioritizing, and just kind of pulling our awareness into right now and realizing what we actually need going forward. So it's a 3 breath practice. On the first breath, we bring awareness to our breath. So just kind of noticing the sensation, maybe in our nose or our chest. And on the second breath, we relax the body. And on the third breath, we ask ourselves what's important now.
Mm,
So maybe we can try this together.
sure.
And so you can close your eyes if you'd like, or keep them open, whatever you're comfortable with. And on the first breath, just become aware of the sensation of your breath. And the second breath, relax your body. So maybe dropping the shoulders or releasing the jaw. And on your third breath, ask yourself what's important now. When you're ready, you can open your eyes. This is kind of a short little integrated practice that I share that we can use at any time of the day. Sometimes people don't even know that you're doing it. And yeah, hopefully that'll be helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That actually did feel great. Having a hectic morning, I think today that truly helped me. Like even just preparing for this, it truly helped me feel much better. So thank you for that, Tahira. And how will our viewers find you? What is the best place to find you if they want to seek your services, Tahira?
Yeah, I'm very active on LinkedIn, so feel free to find me there. Also, my website, www.chainreaction.life. I'm also on Instagram, also very active there too, and I'm doing Instagram lives every Thursday. So feel free to jump on that and join in on Thursdays at 6:30 MST. And yeah, those are probably the best ways to reach out to me. Love to chat with anyone who has any questions or would like some more information. I've been working lots with organizations and sort of bringing these workshops to teams right now. So yeah, would love to chat.
Awesome. That was fantastic. Would love to encourage our viewers to reach out to you and seek your services. Thank you so much for your time today, Tahira. We greatly appreciate it. And have a wonderful day.
Thank you, you too.